Patricia! Hey!
Free Patricia! Free Patricia! Free Patricia!
She was S-I-C-K. She needed help, not prosecution. Don't you dare walk away from me when I am talking to you!
The security alert screamed at 6:47 a.m., but I was already 20 miles away, strapped to a physical therapy table with needles in my shoulder and absolutely no way to stop what was about to happen. I watched through my phone as Patricia Whitmore stepped onto my property in a coral blazer and designer sunglasses, flanked by two men carrying a chainsaw that caught the dawn light like a blade. Behind them, parked in my driveway, sat a vehicle I didn't recognize, a black Chevy Tahoe with government plates. My stomach dropped. Dr. Simone Cartwright's rental. The EPA deputy director who'd spent the night in my guest house, sleeping 20 feet from the tree Patricia was about to murder. I tried to sit up. Dana, my therapist, pushed me back down. Marcus, you've got 12 needles in your rotator cuff. You move, you tear. On screen, Patricia pointed at my magnolia. The chainsaw roared to life. I wasn't a religious man, but I prayed then not that she'd stop, but that when the tree fell, it would fall exactly where it deserved to. My name is Marcus Thornton. 58 years old, black, former petroleum engineer turned environmental consultant. I bought 4 acres on the Ashley River in Charleston, South Carolina in 2019 after cashing out of the offshore oil industry with a battered body and enough money to build something that mattered. The house took 18 months, reclaimed cypress, salvaged dock pilings, every angle calculated to frame water and catch wind. I designed it alone, built it with help, and when it was done, I had the one thing 20 years on oil rigs never gave me: silence. Then Riverbend Estates came, 73 pastel McMansions sprouting like tumors on what used to be protected wetland. The developer had greased the right palms, and suddenly my sanctuary had neighbors with an HOA, mandatory beautification standards, and Patricia Whitmore. Patricia wasn't just the HOA president. She was a zealot, the kind of woman who measured happiness in right angles and compliance. She'd moved to Charleston from Connecticut 5 years ago, bought the biggest house in Riverbend, and immediately declared war on anything she couldn't control. Unapproved mailbox colors. Unauthorized garden gnomes. Boats parked in driveways. She fined a 70-year-old veteran $300 for that last one. I met her 2 years ago when she knocked on my door with a clipboard and a smile sharp enough to gut fish. "Mr. Thornton, we're organizing a neighborhood watch. As our closest neighbor, we thought you'd want to contribute." I told her I had cameras, a shotgun, and 20 years of risk assessment training. She'd blink twice, smile freezing like spoiled cream. Well, if you ever want to be part of something meaningful, the threat was subtle but clear: conform or be pushed out. I didn't conform, and between us, blocking her kitchen window's view of the Ashley River, stood a southern magnolia, 110 years old, 46 inches across, protected by the South Carolina Forestry Commission since 2020. I had the brass plaque mounted beneath it. Patricia hated that tree more than she'd probably hated anything in her polished, curated life. I first learned she wanted it gone 3 weeks ago, September 28, 2024, when someone forwarded me an email with the subject line, "You need to see this." It was the agenda from Riverbend's monthly HOA meeting. Item, #7, Visual Obstruction, Thornton Boundary Tree. I wasn't invited, obviously. My land was outside their jurisdiction, but the language made my blood simmer. Property value impact, aesthetic disruption, community enhancement opportunity. I showed up anyway. The meeting was in their beige clubhouse, all folding chairs and fluorescent lights. 30 residents faced Patricia at the front, where a projector displayed a photo of my magnolia with red arrows pointing at it like a target. "As you can see," Patricia began, laser pointer in hand, "this tree significantly impairs our shared river views. Several homeowners have expressed concern about declining property values." "That's bullshit," I said from the back. Every head turned. Patricia's face went through a rapid slideshow. Shock, fury, forced calm. "Mr. Thornton, how kind of you to join us." I walked forward slowly, letting the silence stretch. "Let's be clear. That tree is on my private property, 12 feet inside my boundary line. It's registered with the state as a heritage tree. Cutting it is a felony." A murmur ran through the crowd. Patricia's smile could have stripped varnish. "We're simply exploring options that benefit the community." "Your kitchen window, you mean?" I stopped 10 feet from her. "I've seen the sight lines." "This isn't about the community. This is about your view." Someone in the back laughed. Patricia's knuckles went white around her pointer. "Some of us understand that being a good neighbor means compromise. And some of us understand that trespassing is a crime." I held her gaze. "Touch my tree, Patricia, and I'll bury you in court." I turned and walked out. As the door closed, I heard her voice, loud enough for everyone. Typical. Some people think rules don't apply to them. I smiled. Because I knew what she really meant was, some people won't do what I tell them. What I didn't know was that she'd already made her decision. The meeting was theater. The real plan was already in motion. 2 weeks passed. Quiet weeks. I worked on a wetland restoration proposal for the EPA, a $4.2 million federal grant to rehabilitate degraded coastal ecosystems. Dr. Simone Cartwright, the EPA's Southeast Regional Deputy Director, flew in on October 14th to review the proposal in person. We worked late into the night at my dining table, spreadsheets and environmental impact studies scattered between coffee mugs. Around midnight, I offered her my guest house rather than making her drive back to her hotel. She accepted. The guest house sat 30 feet from the main structure, a small cypress cottage I'd built for visiting consultants. Comfortable bed, kitchenette, its own bathroom. Simone settled in around 12:30 a.m. Her black Chevy Tahoe EPA fleet vehicle, government plates, sat in my driveway beside my truck. We'd scheduled a final review meeting for 8 a.m. before she flew back to Atlanta. I never made that meeting. At 5:30 a.m. on October 15th, I woke to my alarm, made coffee, and drove to Charleston Physical Therapy for my twice-weekly appointment. Rotator cuff rehab from an offshore injury that ended my oil career, court-mandated as part of my workplace settlement. Dana, my therapist, was already prepping the dry needling equipment when I arrived at 6:15. At 6:47 a.m., my phone exploded with alerts, motion sensors, gate camera, driveway camera, perimeter cameras, all firing at once. I pulled up the app with my good arm while Dana inserted the first needle into my shoulder. On screen, Patricia's silver Lexus SUV rolling through my open gate, followed by a white pickup truck with Riverbend Maintenance stenciled on the door. What the hell? I started sitting up. Dana's hand clamped down. "Marcus, no. You've got needles in muscle tissue. You move wrong. You tear." I froze, watching my phone. Patricia climbed out of her Lexus in yoga pants and a coral blazer, sunglasses covering half her face despite the early hour. The two men from the pickup emerged carrying equipment, chainsaw, fuel can, ropes. My heart hammered. "They're on my property," I said. "Call the sheriff." Dana grabbed her phone while I watched Patricia walk directly to the Magnolia, circle it once, then point at the trunk. One of the workers hesitated, saying something I couldn't hear through the camera audio. Patricia's body language was sharp, commanding. She pointed again. The worker pulled the chainsaw cord. The engine snarled to life. I tried 911 myself, hands shaking. "Charleston County, what's your emergency?" "Trespassing in progress with power tools, 1847 Riverbend Lane. They're cutting down a protected heritage tree on my property." "Sir, are you on scene?" "No, I looked at Dana's needles, at my useless arm. I'm 20 miles away, but it's happening right now, on camera. Units are being dispatched. Do not attempt to..." I hung up. Because on screen, the chainsaw bit into the Magnolia's trunk. Sawdust sprayed. The tree that had stood for 110 years shuddered, and behind Patricia, parked innocently in my driveway, sat Simone's Tahoe. the one piece Patricia hadn't accounted for, the one variable that was about to turn her act of vandalism into a federal case. The Magnolia groaned. Even through my phone's tinny speaker, I could hear it a sound like the earth splitting. The workers jumped back. Patricia took 3 steps backward, still pointing, still directing. And then the tree began to fall. Not toward the road like they'd planned, not toward the open yard. Backward. Directly toward the spot where they'd parked their pickup truck. The worker with the chainsaw screamed. Patricia's mouth opened in a silent wail. The Magnolia came down like the hand of God, 110 years of growth and mass and magnificent fury. It hit the pickup truck dead center. The roof crumpled like tinfoil. Every window exploded. The bed compacted into the cab. Metal shrieked. And then the tree kept going, branches spreading, the crown catching the Tahoe's rear quarter panel with a sickening crunch. Jesus Christ, Dana whispered behind me. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. On screen, Patricia stood frozen in the wreckage, coral blazer now dusted with sawdust and leaves, staring at the destruction like she'd just witnessed her own execution. The 2 workers were actually running toward their smashed truck, then away from it, then in circles like ants whose hill had been kicked. And then the door to my guest house opened. Dr. Simone Cartwright stepped onto the porch in FBI sweats and a t-shirt, coffee mug in one hand, phone in the other. She was a small woman, maybe 5'3", but she had the presence of a federal prosecutor. She looked at her damaged Tahoe, looked at the fallen Magnolia, looked at Patricia. When she spoke, her voice carried across the morning air, clearly enough for the camera mic to catch it. Somebody want to tell me what the fuck just happened to my vehicle? Patricia turned toward her, face draining of color. We thought. You thought what? Simone walked down the porch steps, barefoot, moving like a woman who'd sent people to prison before breakfast. You thought destroying federal property on private land was legal? One of the workers, a kid, maybe 25, raised his hands. Ma'am, we were told this was authorized HOA maintenance. We were told the owner approved. The owner, Simone said coldly, is Marcus Thornton, and he's not here, so who told you this was authorized? Everyone looked at Patricia. She seemed to physically shrink, voice barely above a whisper. The tree was blocking the view. It wasn't supposed to, the wind we calculated. You calculated. Simone pulled out her credentials, EPA, Office of Inspector General, Criminal Investigations Division. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step away from the scene. What's your name? Patricia Whitmore. I'm the HOA president of a development that has 0 jurisdiction over this property. Simone looked at the workers. Either of you want to explain why you're trespassing with power tools? The kid with the chainsaw was shaking. She said Mrs. Whitmore said it was an emergency removal, that the homeowner had requested it and couldn't be here. She showed us a work order. Do you have that work order? Silence. Simone turned back to Patricia. You forged a work order. It wasn't a question. Patricia's mouth opened and closed, like a fish, drowning in air. I was still on the therapy table, still stuck with needles, but I was smiling now. Dark, furious, victorious, smiling. Dana looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Marcus, what? She just destroyed a federal vehicle during a federal consultation while trespassing on camera. I said, she's done. She's completely done. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Mr. Thornton? A woman's voice, young and scared. This is Brianna. I work in the Riverbend HOA office. I'm not supposed to be calling, but Patricia didn't have authorization for this. The board didn't approve anything. She did this on her own. Are you willing to testify to that? A pause. Yes, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. It's not your fault, I said, but I need you to document everything. Every email, every communication. Can you do that? Yes, I'm already copying files. Good. Send them to... I gave her my email. And Brianna, don't tell Patricia you called. She hung up. On screen, 2 Charleston County Sheriff's deputies were pulling into my driveway, lights silent but strobing blue across the dawn. Patricia tried to compose herself, smoothing her blazer, but her hands were shaking. Simone met the deputies, credentials already out, voice calm and precise as she explained what had happened. Within 20 minutes, more vehicles arrived, EPA investigators. A South Carolina Forestry Commission ranger I knew named Derek, who took one look at the magnolia stump and said something that made Patricia flinch. By the time Dana carefully removed the needles from my shoulder and cleared me to drive, the scene had transformed into a full criminal investigation. I made it back to my property by 8:30 a.m. The magnolia lay across my driveway like a fallen giant, roots torn and bleeding sap. The pickup truck was unrecognizable. Simone's Tahoe had a crushed rear panel and shattered taillights. And Patricia stood handcuffed beside a sheriff's deputy, coral blazer now looking ridiculous in the morning light, face streaked with tears and sawdust. I walked up slowly. She saw me and actually tried to speak. "Marcus, please, this is a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I repeated. "You trespassed onto clearly marked private property. You ordered the destruction of a state-protected heritage tree. You forged a work order. You lied to these workers. And you destroyed a federal vehicle during an active EPA consultation." I stopped 5 feet from her. "The only misunderstanding here is you thinking you'd get away with it." Simone appeared at my elbow. "Marcus, you okay?" "My tree's dead." "But yeah, I'm okay." She nodded toward Patricia. "She's being charged with criminal trespass, vandalism of protected property, and destruction of federal property. The EPA's Inspector General is opening a formal investigation, and based on what I heard her say on your camera footage, we're adding obstruction and false statements." "You recorded the whole thing?" I asked. "I was on a video call with my supervisor in Atlanta when the chainsaw started. Got the whole thing, including the part where she told them to do it fast before he gets back." Patricia made a sound like a wounded animal. I didn't feel good about it, but I didn't feel bad either. A woman in a Riverbend HOA polo approached hesitantly. Late 40s, dark hair, kind eyes. "Mr. Thornton? I'm Angela Torres. I'm on the HOA board. I just want you to know, we had no idea Patricia was doing this. The board never authorized it. We're horrified. I believed her. Appreciated. But you might want to check your bylaws, because your president just exposed your association to massive legal liability." Angela's face went pale. "Oh God." "The insurance probably won't cover criminal acts," I said. "You should get a lawyer. A good one." She nodded and walked away, already pulling out her phone. By noon, I'd handed over memory cards from all 6 of my cameras to the investigators. The footage was damning. Patricia arriving before dawn, directing the workers, pointing at the trunk. The forged work order she'd shown them, which turned out to be an HOA letterhead with completely fabricated language about emergency tree removal authorized by property owner. But the worst part, the part that would end up in every court filing, was the audio. Crystal clear on my birdhouse camera, Patricia's voice. "Cut it fast. If we do it at dawn, he won't know it was us. Make it look like it fell naturally." The worker, "What if he has cameras?" "He's not going to take us to court over a tree. People like him don't follow through." I played that section 3 times for the detectives. Each time, Patricia's lawyer, some guy in a cheap suit who'd arrived around 10 a.m., looked more like he wanted to be anywhere else. By 2 p.m., Patricia had been formally arrested and booked on 3 charges: criminal trespass, felony vandalism of protected property, and destruction of federal property. Bail was set at $50,000. She posted it by 5 p.m., but the conditions were strict. GPS monitoring, no contact with me, surrender of passport, no HOA authority. I hired a lawyer that afternoon. Claudia Reeves, 50-something steel gray hair and a reputation for eating people like Patricia for breakfast. She arrived at my property at 6 p.m., surveyed the damage, watched the camera footage once, and smiled. "Marcus, this is the most documented crime I've seen in 20 years. She's finished."
People like him don't follow.
"Good," I said. Because I want her buried. Claudia's smile widened. Then let's get started. But as I stood there in the fading light, looking at the Magnolia's corpse sprawled across my property, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph. Not even anger anymore. Just tired. Bone deep. Soul tired. Because I knew this was just the beginning. Patricia wouldn't go quietly. People like her never did. And the war we were about to fight would get uglier before it got better. What I didn't know yet was just how ugly, or how close I'd come to losing everything before it was over. The thing about Patricia Whitmore was she'd spent 54 years believing the world would bend to her will if she just pushed hard enough. 2 decades of HOA dictatorship had reinforced that belief, so when reality finally pushed back hard, public, and permanent, she didn't accept it. She doubled down. The first sign came that same night. At 11:47 p.m., my perimeter cameras caught movement near the property line. A figure in dark clothing moving low through the trees. I was still awake, sitting on my porch with bourbon and rage, watching the live feed on my phone. The figure approached my storage shed where I kept backup drives and camera equipment. I called 911 again. Same property, same suspect, attempted break-in in progress. The dispatcher recognized my address. Units rolling now, Mr. Thornton. Do not engage. I didn't engage. I just watched as the figure tried the shed's lock with what looked like a crowbar. My motion sensors tripped. Exterior floods lit up the yard like a prison break. The figure ran that same stiff-legged gait I'd seen Patricia use, the one caused by her hip replacement 2 years ago. The one she'd mentioned in an HOA newsletter about overcoming adversity through community service. The deputies arrived 4 minutes later, found crowbar marks on the shed door, boot prints in the mud, size 7 women's. They took photos, filed a report, added attempted burglary, and destruction of evidence to Patricia's growing list. But she wasn't arrested again. Not yet. Her lawyer claimed she'd been home all night. No proof it was her, just circumstantial evidence. The gait, the timing, the obvious motive. Claudia called me the next morning. They can't charge her without more evidence, but Marcus, this means she's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. She's already made about 6, I said. Let's see how many more she can rack up. The mistakes came fast. On October 18th, 3 days after the Magnolia fell, Patricia called an emergency HOA board meeting, except she didn't notify the full board, just 3 loyalists who'd kiss her ass from here to Columbia. They met in her living room, discussed how to manage the narrative, how to claim the tree was structurally unsound and posed imminent danger to residents. I know this because Janice Cho, an actual board member who'd been excluded, showed up uninvited with a recording app. She sent me the audio file that night with a subject line, "She's planning to lie under oath." The recording was 38 minutes of Patricia constructing a fantasy, where I was the aggressive neighbor, where the Magnolia was dying and dangerous, where she'd acted in emergency authority to protect lives and property. And then, at minute 32, this gem, Patricia's voice, cold now. The camera footage can be challenged. Timestamps can be wrong. Weather data can be contradicted. We need an expert who'll testify the tree was unstable. One of her loyalists. What expert? Every arborist in Charleston knows that tree was healthy. Then we find one from out of state. Someone who'll write what we need. Janice's note at the end of the file. She's talking about fabricating evidence. You need to hear this. I forwarded it to Claudia, who forwarded it to the Charleston County Solicitor's Office. By October 20th, obstruction of justice had been added to Patricia's charges. But she still didn't stop. That same day, her new lawyer, the cheap suit, had quit, filed a counterclaim. Patricia was suing me for negligent maintenance of a hazardous tree and claiming her actions were justified under emergency doctrine to prevent imminent harm. The filing included an expert report from Dr. Kenneth Albright, certified arborist and tree risk assessor, 8 pages of technical jargon about structural deficiencies, root decay, and imminent failure probability. It looked official. professional letterhead, ISA certification number, PhD credentials from Clemson University. Except Claudia ran the name through every database. International Society of Arboriculture, American Society of Consulting Arborists, state licensing boards, Clemson alumni records, nothing. Zero. Dr. Kenneth Albright didn't exist. The credentials were fake. The certification number belonged to a retired arborist in Oregon who died in 2021. The signature was digitally pasted. Even the letterhead was poorly photoshopped. You could see the original company name ghosted behind it under the right light. She forged an expert witness, Claudia said, holding the document like it might explode. She paid someone to fabricate a professional report and submitted it to the court under penalty of perjury. I sat back and laughed until my ribs hurt. How stupid is she? Stupid enough to think she could lie her way out of a recorded crime. Claudia's eyes gleamed. This is prosecutorial gold, Marcus. Forgery of official documents is a Class 4 felony, up to 10 years. We filed an emergency motion that afternoon, attaching proof that Dr. Albright didn't exist. We also filed a formal complaint with the South Carolina Bar against Patricia's new lawyer for submitting fraudulent documents. He withdrew from the case within 18 hours. The solicitor's office upgraded the charges again: fraud and forgery. The South Carolina Forestry Commission issued a public statement condemning the destruction of Heritage Tree #47821 and announcing a $50,000 fine payable by Patricia personally, not the HOA. Because she'd acted outside her authority, the Riverbend Board figured that out quickly. On October 23rd, they held an emergency meeting properly noticed, this time, full quorum, lawyer present. I wasn't there, but Janice recorded it and sent me the highlights. Angela Torres, the board member I'd met at the scene, motioned to suspend Patricia pending legal resolution. The vote was 6-1. The only dissent was Patricia's. By October 25th, she'd been formally removed as HOA president under the bylaws' gross misconduct clause. The board's statement was blunt. Miss Whitmore acted without authorization, violated state and federal law, and exposed Riverbend Estates to catastrophic liability. Effective immediately, she holds no position in this organization. I heard through Janice that Patricia screamed at them for 45 minutes, called them cowards and traitors, threatened individual lawsuits, finally stormed out when they called security. Her husband, Dr. Richard Whitmore, a dentist who'd stayed silent through everything, filed for separation 3 days later. Their house went on the market October 30th, listed at $890,000. It sold in 6 days for $775,000 to an investor. Patricia moved into a rental condo downtown, alone. And that's when I made my first mistake. I started to relax. Started to think the worst was over. Started to believe that Patricia, stripped of power and facing criminal charges, would finally accept reality. I was wrong. On November 3rd, at 2:17 a.m., my smoke detectors went off. Not the ones inside the house, the external ones I'd installed in the shed and workshop after the break-in attempt. I bolted awake, grabbed my phone. The shed camera showed orange light flickering inside. Flames. I called 911 while running barefoot across the yard. Fire in my storage shed, 1847 Riverbend Lane. Possible arson. The shed was fully involved by the time I reached it. Heat drove me back. Inside were my backup hard drives, camera equipment, tools, half my consulting files, 10 years of work. The fire department arrived in 8 minutes. By then, the shed was gone. Just a smoking skeleton of charred wood and melted plastic. The fire marshal investigated at dawn, found the point of origin, rear wall, exterior, accelerant pattern consistent with gasoline, and boot prints in the mud. Same size 7 women's boots from the earlier break-in attempt. Same stiff gait pattern on the camera footage, the figure approaching the shed at 2:09 a.m., pouring something from a gas can, lighting it, and running. This time, the exterior camera on my workshop caught the figure's face for just 2 seconds as the flames lit up the night. Patricia Whitmore. No hood this time. Just her face, twisted with rage and desperation, illuminated by the fire she'd started. The fire marshal called the sheriff. The sheriff called the solicitor. By 9 a.m., Patricia was arrested again. This time, no bail. Arson of an occupied dwelling I'd been home sleeping was a violent felony. She was remanded to Charleston County Detention Center. Claudia called me while I was standing in the ashes of my shed. "Marcus, are you okay?" "No," I said honestly. "She burned 10 years of my work." "The cameras. Cloud backup?" I said. "I learned that lesson in the oil industry. Everything's on encrypted cloud storage." She destroyed the physical copies, but the digital files are fine. "Thank God," Claudia exhaled. "Marcus, this changes everything. Arson is serious time. She's looking at 15 years minimum, maybe 20 with the other charges stacked. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt hollow. Because standing there, in the ashes, I realized something. Patricia had become so consumed by the need to win, to be right, to destroy me, that she'd set herself on fire in the process. And I'd let it happen. I'd wanted her buried. Now, she was burying herself, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd become part of something ugly. "Claudia," I said, "I want this over." "It will be. But Marcus, you need to prepare yourself. The trial's going to be brutal." She was right. But brutal didn't begin to cover what was coming. The preliminary hearing on November 8th felt less like a legal proceeding and more like watching someone's life disintegrate in real time. Judge Andrea Hollins, a black woman in her early 60s with eyes that missed nothing, entered the courtroom with the case file under her arm and a look that suggested she'd already made up her mind about the kind of person who burns down their neighbor's property. Patricia sat at the defense table in a gray dress, 2 sizes too big, hair unwashed, face hollow. She'd been in jail for 5 days. It showed her third lawyer, a public defender named Marcus Chen, who looked fresh out of law school, sat beside her with the expression of a man assigned to defend the Titanic. Claudia, Simone Cartwright, and I sat at the plaintiff's table. Behind us, the gallery was packed. News crews, Riverbend residents, even Angela Torres and half the HOA board, looking like they'd come to witness an execution. Judge Hollins didn't waste time. "We're here to determine bail reconsideration and preliminary charges in the matter of State versus Patricia Whitmore. Miss Reeves, present your case." Claudia stood. "Your Honor, the defendant has engaged in an escalating pattern of criminal behavior, criminal trespass, felony vandalism, destruction of federal property, attempted burglary, forgery, obstruction of justice, and finally, arson of an occupied dwelling. She has repeatedly violated the law, lied to investigators, fabricated evidence, and attempted to destroy evidence. She is a danger to my client and the community." She played the footage, all of it, the magnolia falling. Patricia's voice. "Do it fast before he gets back. The attempted break-in, the forged expert report, and finally, the arson." Patricia's face lit by flames, gas can in hand, running with that telltale limp. The courtroom was dead silent. Judge Hollins watched without expression, but her jaw tightened with each video. When the arson footage played, someone in the gallery gasped. Patricia closed her eyes. When the videos ended, Claudia continued, "Your Honor, Mr. Thornton has done nothing but exercise his legal right to protect his property. The defendant has responded with a crime spree. She is unrepentant, unstable, and dangerous. We ask that she remain in custody pending trial." Judge Hollins turned to the defense. "Mr. Chen?" The young public defender stood slowly. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges that mistakes were made. However, she's a lifelong Charleston resident with no prior criminal history. She's not a flight risk. She committed arson," Judge Hollins interrupted, "of an occupied dwelling, while already on GPS monitoring for previous crimes. What part of that suggests she'll comply with bail conditions?" Chen had no answer. Judge Hollins looked at Patricia for a long moment. "Miss Whitmore, I'm going to ask you a direct question. Do you understand the severity of what you've done? Patricia's voice was barely audible. I just wanted the tree gone. You just wanted, Judge Hollins repeated slowly, the tree gone. So you trespassed, committed vandalism, destroyed federal property, forged documents, attempted burglary, and when none of that worked, you committed arson. Silence. Miss. Whitmore, stand up. Patricia rose on shaking legs. I've been on this bench for 18 years. I've seen people make mistakes. I've seen people commit crimes. But I've never seen someone systematically destroy their own life over a view. The judge's voice hardened. Bail is denied. You are remanded to custody pending trial. Based on the severity of the charges and the escalating pattern of behavior, I'm also ordering a psychiatric evaluation. Patricia sat down hard, like her legs had given out. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. Judge Hollins looked at Simone. Dr. Cartwright, I understand the EPA is proceeding independently? Simone stood. Yes, Your Honor. Federal charges for destruction of government property and interference with federal operations. We're also investigating potential environmental violations related to the illegal removal of a protected tree. Good. Mr. Thornton, Judge Hollins looked at me. Sir, I'm sorry for what you've been through. This court will ensure justice is served. I nodded, not trusting my voice, because I didn't feel like justice was being served. I felt like I was watching a woman self-destruct in slow motion, and somehow, I was part of the audience. The hearing ended. Patricia was led out in handcuffs. The gallery emptied. Claudia turned to me. Marcus, you won. Did I? I said. Because it doesn't feel like winning. What do you mean? I mean, look at her, Claudia. She destroyed her life over a tree, over a view, over her need to control something she had no right to control, and yeah, she deserves consequences, but this I gestured at the courtroom. This feels like we both lost. Claudia studied me. You're not going soft on me, are you? No, I want this over. I want to rebuild my shed, plant a new tree, and forget Patricia Whitmore exists. Then testify at the trial, help put her away, and then you can move on. I agreed. But as I walked out of the courthouse into the November sunlight, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more coming. That Patricia, even from a jail cell, wasn't done yet. I was right. The call came 3 days later, November 11th, just after dawn. Claudia's voice was tight. Marcus, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where Patricia's lawyer just filed a motion claiming she's being prosecuted because of racial bias. She's alleging you filed complaints against her because she's white and you're black, and that you're using your connections with federal agencies to weaponize the system against her. I was silent for a long moment. She's playing the race card. After everything she did, it gets worse. She's claiming the magnolia was culturally significant to Riverbend's heritage community, and that your refusal to remove it was an act of reverse discrimination. I laughed. Dark, bitter laughter. She destroyed a 110-year-old tree and a federal vehicle on camera, and now she's claiming I'm the racist? Her lawyer's desperate, Claudia said. This is a Hail Mary. But Marcus, the media's going to run with it. This is going to get ugly. She was right. By that afternoon, local news had picked up the story. Racial tensions in HOA dispute. One headline read, another, Black homeowner versus White HOA president, who's really the victim? My phone exploded with calls, reporters, activists, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted a statement. I gave one. Short and direct. Patricia Whitmore committed multiple crimes, all documented on camera. This isn't about race, it's about the law. And the law applies to everyone. But the damage was done. Social media lit up. Half the comments supported me. The other half called me everything from a race baiter to a federal plant. Someone dug up my employment history with the EPA and claimed I was part of a deep state conspiracy to persecute suburban whites. It was insane. And it was working. On November 15th, a small protest formed outside the Charleston County Courthouse. maybe 20 people holding signs. Free Patricia Whitmore and Stop Anti-White Persecution. I watched the news coverage from my porch and felt something I hadn't felt through any of this. Genuine fear. Not of Patricia, but of what this had become. A woman had committed crimes. Clear, documented crimes. And now she was turning herself into a martyr, and people were believing her. Claudia called that night. The solicitor's office is holding firm. They're not dropping charges. But Marcus, there's something else you need to know. What? Patricia's psychiatric evaluation came back. She's been diagnosed with delusional disorder, persecutory type. Her psychiatrist is recommending she be moved to a secure medical facility instead of jail. My stomach dropped. She's going to plead insanity. It's a possibility. If the court accepts it, she'd go to a psychiatric facility instead of prison. She'd still be confined, but the optics make it look like she's the victim. I finished, like she was mentally ill, and I pushed her to break. Marcus, that's not, isn't it? I said. I had the cameras. I had the evidence. I had federal witnesses. I knew I'd win from the start, and I wanted her buried. I said that to you. I wanted her destroyed. She destroyed herself, Claudia said firmly. You defended your property. You didn't make her commit arson. But I didn't stop pushing either. Every time she escalated, I escalated back. I could have dropped the civil suit after the criminal charges. I could have accepted a plea deal early, but I wanted maximum consequences. And now what? You feel guilty? I don't know what I feel, I admitted. I just know this isn't what I wanted. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Claudia said quietly, Marcus, you're a good man, better than most, but you can't save people from themselves. Patricia made her choices. Every single one. You're not responsible for that. Maybe, but that night, lying awake in my house, I couldn't stop thinking about the look on Patricia's face in that courtroom. The hollowness. The defeat. The absolute disintegration of a human being who'd once believed she controlled the world. And I wondered if I'd handled things differently from the start, if I'd tried to talk to her instead of threatening court, if I'd offered compromise instead of confrontation, would any of this have happened? Would the magnolia still be standing? Would Patricia still have her life? I didn't have answers. Just questions and ashes and a burnt shed, and the feeling that I'd won a war but lost something I couldn't quite name. The trial was set for January 2025. I'd testify. I'd tell the truth. And then I'd try to move on. But first, I had to survive. What came next? The attack came on November 21st, 10 days before Thanksgiving. I was working in my home office when the brick came through the window. It hit my desk, scattering papers and shattering my coffee mug. I dove to the floor on instinct. 20 years on, oil rigs taught you to react first, think later, and army crawled to the wall, away from the broken window. My phone was in my pocket. I called 911 with shaking hands. Somebody just threw a brick through my window. 1847 River Bend Lane. Are you injured, sir? No, but they might still be out there. Stay inside. Units are en route. I stayed low, moving to the hallway where I had a clear view of the front door and my security monitors. The camera showed nothing, no vehicles, no people, just the brick lying in the wreckage of my window. Then I saw the paper wrapped around it. I waited until the deputies arrived before going outside. They cleared the property first, then let me approach. The note was computer printed, taped to the brick. You destroyed her life. Now we'll destroy yours. Leave Charleston or die. The deputies photographed it, bagged it as evidence, ran prints. Nothing. The brick was standard construction grade, sold at every Home Depot in the state. The paper was standard printer stock, untraceable, but the message was clear. Patricia had supporters, and they were willing to commit violence. Claudia arranged private security that night, a firm out of Columbia that specialized in high-risk cases. 2 guards, armed, rotating 12-hour shifts. One patrolled the property, One sat in an SUV at my gate. It cost $400 a day. I paid it. The second attack came November 24th. My truck's tires slashed in my driveway. All four. Clean cuts. Professional. The cameras caught nothing. The angle was wrong, blocked by the vehicle itself. Whoever did it knew where the blind spots were. The third attack was November 27th. Someone poured sugar in my truck's gas tank. Engine seized the next morning. $3,000 in repairs. Again, no footage. They were learning, adapting. And I was trapped in my own home, surrounded by security, living like a prisoner. On November 29th, Janice called me. Her voice was shaking. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. About Patricia." "What?" "She's been making calls from jail, to HOA members, to people in the community. She's telling them you're trying to destroy Riverbend, that you're planning to sue the HOA for millions and force everyone out of their homes. She's painting you as the villain." "That's insane," I said. "I've never threatened the HOA." "I know, but people are believing her. There's a group forming. They're calling themselves Riverbend Resistance. They're planning something, Marcus. I don't know what, but I'm scared." I forwarded the information to the sheriff and to Claudia. They took it seriously. An investigation was opened into Patricia's jail calls. Turned out, she'd been violating her communication restrictions, using a contraband phone someone had smuggled in. More charges were filed, but the damage was done. On December 3rd, the preliminary trial date was set for January 15th, 2025. Patricia's lawyer filed notice that they'd be pursuing an insanity defense based on the psychiatric evaluation. The solicitor objected, but the judge allowed it, which meant the trial would now focus not just on what Patricia did, but on her mental state when she did it, and I'd be painted as the catalyst. The aggressive neighbor who pushed a mentally ill woman over the edge. Claudia prepped me for what was coming. They're going to make you look like the villain. They'll argue you had all the power, the cameras, the federal connections, the legal knowledge, and you used it to systematically destroy a vulnerable woman who committed arson. I said, "That's what we'll prove. But Marcus, you need to be ready. They're going to ask why you didn't compromise, why you didn't just cut down the tree, why you pushed for maximum charges. Your answers need to be rock solid." I spent weeks preparing, reviewing footage, memorizing timelines, practicing testimony, but no amount of preparation could have readied me for what happened on December 18th. I was at the Piggly Wiggly buying groceries when a woman approached me, late 60s, white, dressed in church clothes. She smiled, friendly. "Excuse me, are you Marcus Thornton?" I should have walked away. "Yes, ma'am." Her face changed, twisted. "You should be ashamed of yourself. Patricia Whitmore is a good woman, a pillar of this community. And you destroyed her over a tree." "Ma'am, with respect, Mrs. Whitmore committed multiple crimes. She was sick," the woman shouted. People were staring now. She needed help, not prosecution, but you were too busy being right to care about her. "She burned down my shed," I said quietly. "She destroyed my property repeatedly. I have every rights." The woman spat the word. "You people are always talking about your rights. What about her rights? What about our rights to feel safe in our own neighborhood? You people." There it was, the thing that had been lurking underneath this whole time. I walked away. The woman followed, still shouting, "You're going to lose, Mr. Thornton. God sees what you're doing. He knows your heart." Security escorted her out, but the video, because of course someone filmed it, went viral. "Racist incident at Charleston grocery store," the headlines read, except the framing was split. Half the coverage portrayed me as the victim of a racist attack. The other half portrayed me as an aggressor who'd provoked a concerned citizen. I couldn't win. No matter what I did, what I said, how I responded, I was either too aggressive or too passive, too litigious or too vengeful, too black or not black enough, depending on who was telling the story. That night, sitting on my porch with bourbon and exhaustion, I called Claudia. "I want to drop the civil suit." She was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus, I want it over. The criminal case goes forward. That's not mine to drop. But the civil suit, the damages, all of it, I'm done. She destroyed your property. You're entitled to compensation. I'm entitled to peace, I said. And I'm not going to get it if I spend the next year fighting her in 2 different courts. Drop the civil suit. Let the state handle the criminal case. I just want to rebuild and move on. Are you sure? No, I admitted, but I'm tired, Claudia, and I think maybe I've been so focused on winning that I forgot what I was fighting for. She agreed to file the motion. On December 20th, we formally withdrew the civil suit. No damages, no restitution. Just a statement. Mr. Thornton wishes to move forward and rebuild. He trusts the criminal justice system to handle the matter appropriately. The response was immediate. Half the news coverage praised me for taking the high road. The other half accused me of abandoning principle or caving to pressure. I ignored all of it. Because for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The criminal trial proceeded. Patricia's defense argued she'd suffered a psychotic break triggered by her inability to control her environment, a symptom of her OCD and anxiety disorders, exacerbated by my hostile responses to her reasonable concerns. I testified on January 15th, 2025, told the truth, showed the footage, explained the timeline. Under cross-examination, Patricia's lawyer asked, "Mr. Thornton, at any point did you consider that Mrs. Whitmore might need help rather than prosecution?" I paused. Yes. The courtroom went still. When did you consider that? Every time she escalated. Every time she made it worse. I knew she was destroying herself, but I also knew she'd committed crimes. And I didn't know how to balance those two things. So you chose prosecution. I chose to protect my property, I said, and I hoped the legal system would be equipped to handle both justice and mercy. I'm not sure it is. The lawyer blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected that answer. Neither had I. But it was the truth. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On January 22nd, 2025, they returned a verdict. Guilty on all counts except arson. On that charge, they found her not guilty by reason of insanity. She was sentenced to 5 years in a secure psychiatric facility, followed by 5 years probation. The federal charges were folded into the state sentence. She'd serve her time, get treatment, and maybe have a chance at rebuilding when she got out. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Like I'd survived a war where everyone lost. That night, I planted a new magnolia. Younger, smaller, nowhere near as grand as the one Patricia had killed. But it was alive, and it would grow. Angela Torres and half the Riverbend board showed up with shovels to help. We didn't talk much, just worked, patting soil around roots, watering it in. When we finished, Angela handed me an envelope. The board voted. Unanimously. We're setting up a scholarship fund in the original tree's name. For environmental science students at the College of Charleston, we wanted to honor what was lost. I opened the envelope. A check for $25,000, signed by all 7 board members. I didn't know what to say. Angela smiled, tired but genuine. We're sorry, Marcus, for everything. We should have stopped her years ago. You couldn't have known. We knew. She interrupted. We knew she was out of control. We just didn't want to deal with it. That's on us. She squeezed my shoulder and left. I stood there in the dark, looking at the new magnolia barely visible against the night sky, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not for Patricia, not even for justice. Just hope that things could grow again, that what had been destroyed could be rebuilt, that forests and people and neighborhoods could heal if given time and care. 3 months later, on April 20th, 2025, I gave a talk at the Riverbend Clubhouse. 20 people showed up. I talked about heritage trees, about why they matter, about how old growth connects us to history and ecology in ways suburban lawns never will. I showed pictures of the magnolia before it fell, talked about its age, its species, its role in the ecosystem, and at the end, I said, Patricia Whitmore destroyed something irreplaceable, but she also destroyed herself. And I think both of those things are tragedies. We can't bring back the tree, but we can plant new ones, and we can build a community where people feel heard before they feel desperate. The applause was hesitant, but it was there. Afterward, several people approached me, thanked me, asked questions about native plantings and conservation easements, and how they could protect trees on their own properties. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. I still have the cameras, still check them every morning, probably always will. Some things change you, but I sleep better now. The magnolia is growing. The scholarship fund is active, and Riverbend has a new president who sends me an annual card thanking me for my patience and grace during a difficult time. I don't know if I had grace, but I had cameras, I had the law, and in the end, I had the choice to stop fighting even when I could have kept going. Patricia Whitmore is still in the psychiatric facility. I haven't heard from her, don't expect to, but sometimes, late at night, I wonder if she ever thinks about that magnolia, about what she lost trying to control something that was never hers to control. I hope she finds peace, not forgiveness, maybe, but peace. Because I'm learning slowly, painfully, that peace isn't something you win in court, it's something you build, tree by tree, day by day, with cameras watching, just in case, but with hope growing despite everything. The magnolia will take decades to match its predecessor. I'll be dead before it reaches that size, but it'll be here, standing, growing. A reminder that some things survive even when people try to destroy them, and maybe that's enough.